The British crown melted down a coronation crown 30 years after it was made. The frame was gold. The gemstones were removed first. No one recorded why. Royal jewels are supposed to outlast kingdoms. Some don't survive a generation. In 1820, George IV commissioned a new state crown for his coronation, over £100,000, more than the cost of a warship. The design included the Stuart sapphire, the Black Prince's ruby, and diamonds borrowed from other pieces. The frame was engineered to support extraordinary weight. Goldsmiths worked for months on the structure. The crown appeared in official portraits. It was documented in royal inventories with detailed descriptions of every stone, every arch, every ornamental element. It was worn once. After George IV's death in 1830, William IV required a crown for his own coronation. The frame from 1820 was described as too heavy. Parts of the design were considered structurally unstable. Rather than commission repairs, the crown jeweller dismantled the entire piece. The sapphire and ruby were removed. The diamonds were extracted from their settings. The gold frame was melted down for its metal content. The stones were transferred to a new crown, made in a different style. The original design disappeared. No photographs exist. Photography had not yet reached England in practical form. The only evidence is written descriptions in jewellers' notes and a few preparatory sketches. The crown that appears in George IV's coronation portraits exists now only in those images. The stone survived. The crown did not. If this kind of history interests you, subscribe to the channel. The Stuart sapphire and Black Prince's ruby would move again. In 1838, they were incorporated into a new imperial state crown for Queen Victoria. That crown became one of the most photographed pieces in the collection. Images show it at state openings, official portraits, coronation ceremonies. It appeared in engravings distributed across the empire. By 1911, that crown too was considered outdated. The structure had been altered multiple times over 70 years. Stones had been added. The frame had been adjusted. The arches had been reinforced. The decision was made to create an entirely new crown using the same gemstones. The 1838 frame was dismantled. The gold was melted. The crown that Victoria wore, the physical object visible in thousands of engravings, paintings, and early photographs, ceased to exist. The stones were transferred to a new platinum and gold frame. The weight was reduced. The proportions were changed to accommodate the newly acquired Cullinan II diamond. Official records describe this as restoration. The 1838 crown was destroyed. What survived was a design concept and a collection of stones that had by then passed through 3 different crowns in 90 years. The image of permanence, the reality of constant replacement. In 1853, Prince Albert ordered the Koh-i-Noor diamond recut. The stone had been presented to Queen Victoria in 1850 as part of the annexation of the Punjab. The original was 186 carats, a Mughal rose cut with a flat base and irregular faceting. Albert wanted a modern brilliant cut to improve its performance under gaslight for the Great Exhibition. Costa of Amsterdam was contracted for the work. The firm was the most prestigious diamond cutter in Europe. The Duke of Wellington attended the process. The cutting took 38 days. Reports describe multiple grinding wheels operating simultaneously. The diamond emerged at 105.6 carats. 80 carats were ground away. Nearly half the stone was removed as powder during the cutting process. There is no record of what happened to that material. It was swept up and disposed of. The lost weight represented diamond that had survived centuries, passed through Mughal emperors, Persian shahs, Afghan rulers, and Sikh maharajas. It was destroyed in a month. Contemporary reviews were measured. Some observers noted improved brilliance under artificial light. Others noted the loss of historical form. Prince Albert had expected the recutting to create a centerpiece worthy of imperial display. The results were considered acceptable, but not exceptional. The diamond's reputation did not improve as dramatically as anticipated. The Mughal cut exists now only in drawings and written descriptions made before 1853. The physical form was destroyed. What remains is a diamond half the weight it carried for 200 years in a shape determined by mid-Victorian aesthetic preferences. The stone was set into a brooch for Queen Victoria. After her death, it was moved to the crown of Queen Alexandra for the 1902 coronation. Then it was transferred to Queen Mary's crown in 1911. Then to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's crown in 1937. Each transfer required a new setting. Each setting was designed for a different crown structure, different proportions, different surrounding stones. Each previous setting was dismantled. The brooch Victoria wore no longer exists in its original form. The elements of Alexandra's crown setting were distributed to other pieces. Mary's setting was altered when the stone was removed. Nothing about the diamond's appearance today reflects how it looked before 1853. The cutting destroyed the form. The repeated transfers destroyed every setting that held it. The same year Prince Albert commissioned the recutting, he ordered the oriental circlet for Queen Victoria, a tiara incorporating opals and diamonds in a Gothic revival style. The opals were large, high-quality specimens set in gold and silver mounts. The piece appeared in portraits painted between 1854 and 1861. It was listed in official inventories with detailed descriptions of each stone. After Albert's death in 1861, the circlet stopped appearing in photographs. It was not mentioned in Victoria's later correspondence. No announcement was made. No explanation was recorded. The piece simply vanished from public view. By the 1870s, records indicate the opals had been removed and replaced with rubies. The piece was redesigned entirely. The Gothic revival elements were simplified. The new version appeared occasionally in later portraits, but it bore little resemblance to the original design. The opal version of the circlet exists in paintings from the 1850s. The physical object does not. Whether the opals were redistributed to other pieces or simply removed from the collection is not documented. The oriental circlet, commissioned by Prince Albert, the last major piece he designed for Victoria, was erased within a decade of his death. No one thought to preserve it. The Cambridge emeralds tell a different story. Given to the Duchess of Cambridge in the 1830s, the emeralds themselves were exceptional. Colombian stones with minimal inclusions, purchased at significant expense. They were originally set in a Gothic-style parure, tiara, necklace, and earrings. The settings were elaborate, consistent with the Gothic revival aesthetic of the period. The design reflected decades of artistic development. The parure appeared in portraits. It was worn at state functions. It was documented in inventories. By the 1920s, Queen Mary wanted something new. The entire suite was dismantled. The emeralds were removed. The gold settings, crafted nearly a century earlier by skilled goldsmiths working in a style that had defined an era, were melted down. The emeralds were reset in an entirely new design, Art Deco style, geometric patterns, platinum mounts. The new pieces retained none of the Gothic elements. The original settings were destroyed for their metal value. 100 years of craft and historical design, converted to raw material because the style no longer suited. The emeralds were later incorporated into a tiara loaned to the Duchess of Gloucester in the 1940s. That setting was subsequently altered. In the 1950s, the emeralds were reset again into a different structure. When they were loaned to the Duchess of Cornwall in the 2000s, they appeared in yet another setting. 3 different tiaras within 80 years. Same stones. No original setting survive. The Gothic parure from the 1830s exists only in portrait paintings and inventory descriptions. The physical objects were converted to raw material decades ago. The Delhi Durbar parure represents something else entirely: waste on a grand scale. Created for Queen Mary in 1911, the parure was commissioned specifically for the Durbar ceremony in Delhi. A tiara, necklace, and stomacher designed to incorporate the Cullinan diamonds and some of the Cambridge emeralds. The design attempted to evoke Mughal aesthetics while asserting British imperial authority. The pieces were expensive. They were intended as a permanent addition to the collection, commemorating the ceremony. The investment was justified as creating lasting symbols of empire. The pieces appeared at the Durbar in December 1911. They were photographed extensively. Queen Mary wore the tiara at several state events in 1912 and 1913. By 1914, the tiara had been altered. The emeralds were removed and replaced with diamonds. The Mughal-inspired elements, paisley motifs, foliate patterns, were simplified or removed entirely. Official records describe adjustments for structural stability. Photographs from 1920 show a piece that retains the basic frame, but few of the design details visible in 1911. The stomacher disappeared from records entirely. No photographs of it exist after 1913. No inventory entries mention it after 1915. The necklace was broken up. The emeralds were transferred to the Cambridge Emerald Collection. The diamonds were distributed to other settings. The tiara frame still exists, but heavily modified. The version created for the 1911 Durbar, the design meant to commemorate imperial ceremony, survives only in photographs taken between 1911 and 1913. 3 years. The physical object was dismantled within 3 years of its creation. Not all dismantling is immediate. Some pieces simply stop appearing. The Russian fringe tiara was made from diamonds and pearls, worn by Princess Marina, Duchess of Kent, throughout the 1930s and 1940s. It appeared in the formal portraits. It was documented in inventories. It was photographed at state banquets and royal events. After Marina's death in 1968, the tiara entered the collection of the Duke of Kent. It has not been photographed at a public event since the 1970s. Official records confirm its continued existence. It has not been loaned to other members of the royal family. It has not been worn at weddings, state dinners, or ceremonial occasions. The tiara exists somewhere in storage. It is maintained but unused. This is a different kind of erasure, not destruction but withdrawal. The object survives physically while ceasing to function as a royal jewel. It has been invisible for over 50 years, while technically remaining part of the collection. In 1937, the crown of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was created for the coronation of George VI. The crown incorporated the Koh-i-Noor diamond, now in its post-1853 form, in a new platinum setting designed by Garrard. The design was lighter than previous consort crowns, with simplified arches and a reduced frame weight. The crown was worn at the 1937 coronation. It appeared on the Queen Mother's coffin in 2002. It has not been worn publicly since. It has not been used by any subsequent consort. There are no announced plans for its future use. The crown exists in the Tower of London collection. Whether it will ever be worn again is undetermined. The precedent, established by dozens of other pieces, suggests eventual dismantling. The Koh-i-Noor would be transferred to a new setting. The platinum frame would be melted. The crown created for 1937 would become another entry in the catalogue of objects that existed once and then were converted to components. The Grand Duchess Vladimir tiara represents the exception. Purchased by Queen Mary in 1921 after being smuggled out of St. Petersburg during the Russian Revolution, the piece has been altered. Emerald drops replaced with pearl drops, settings adjusted for different wearers, but the basic structure remains recognisable. Photographs from 1921 and photographs from 2024 show essentially the same object. This is unusual. Most pieces do not survive a century without complete redesign. The Vladimir tiara is well made, but so was George IV's state crown. It contains valuable stones, but so did the Delhi Durbar parure. The difference is not inherent quality or material worth. The difference is accident. The Vladimir tiara happened to suit multiple wearers. It happened to remain fashionable across changing aesthetic periods. It happened to avoid structural problems that would require dismantling. And so it survived, not through any special property, but through the accumulation of small decisions not to change it. Everything else was taken apart. In 1953, Elizabeth II wore the imperial state crown, the version created for George V in 1911, with minor modifications for weight distribution. The crown she wore contained the Cullinan 2 diamond from Edward VII's crown, the Stuart sapphire from pieces dating to Charles II, the Black Prince's ruby from medieval origins, diamonds from a dozen dismantled tiaras and brooches. What appears in coronation photographs is an object made in 1911, incorporating materials from objects made in 1838, 1820, 1760, and earlier. It looks like a single artifact. It is actually a composite of fragments assembled from the remains of pieces that no longer exist. Hundreds of pieces listed in 19th century inventories no longer exist as described. The stones remain, redistributed across modern settings. The original frames are gone, melted for their metal content. The designs survive in portraits, photographs, and written descriptions, documenting objects that no longer exist in physical form. The tiaras commissioned as permanent additions to the collection were reduced to components within decades. The jewels meant to pass through generations were dismantled within one. The pieces created to commemorate coronations, weddings, and state ceremonies were taken apart and converted to raw material for new designs. The gold was melted, the weight was recovered, the value was preserved, the object disappeared.